Oh my goodness! Good evening, good evening. Didn't we just do something like this just a few days ago, or just like 2 or 3 weeks ago? I swear to God, we just there's so much to talk about that we need more episodes of this stuff to happen. All right, but tonight we've got something. We've got a new target. I mean, we've got a new special guest coming on tonight that we're going to discuss some upcoming things with him that I know myself is just dying to get his hands on it whenever it comes out. But and it's up my alley because it's the American Civil War. I know we've had this announced for 2 weeks, but before we drag our target in here, let's say hey to everybody. Todd, how you doing, buddy?
Good. I'm excited to talk about this. I have this on pre-order, and even though I'm not a Civil War guy or the system player, but got to support our guest.
And Kev from Oz, what's going on, man?
Hey guys, I'm not sure if I need to be here, but American Civil War, let's do it.
Yeah, but you know what? You and Todd with the gaming background, there's something. Once we get this flowing, there's going to be questions.
Be cool.
Andrew,
where's Todd's robe? Where's Todd's robe, Andrew?
That's a good. Well, today in St. Louis we're doing the hoods. I don't know.
Oh, the hoods. Wait.
Oh, Texas too.
Oh, Texas hood.
Jeff's gonna go full blown Cornholio. My name Jeff Polio. I need games for my game hall.
All right, well, let's go ahead and bring our special guest in here. We got, and here he comes. No, well, we're bringing in Alan, aka Stiglr Dickinson.
Woo!
He is here, and we are going to just run him through the ringer tonight over this upcoming release. Which
I know it.
And
my insurance is paid up, so just go for it.
You haven't had a chance yet to get on and look who's coming in. You haven't had a chance to discuss this on the internet yet, have you, with anybody?
Yeah, I did do a short interview over a year ago, and now I'm trying to remember who it was with.
Did you talk over this with Artie?
No, I have not talked with Art Wolf. Yeah, although he's contacted me about, maybe when we're closer to release date, he might want to chat with me about it. So.
Right. Mo, how you doing, buddy? How's the hockey game?
Oh, holy smokes.
He probably can't hear us yet. Yeah. We like it like that.
Yeah, let's just keep him muted.
He's on mega lag.
All right, so we're going to talk about bayonets and swords tonight, and somewhere along here, we're just going to turn Stiglr loose and let him screen share and show us some of the stuff he's got in this thing. But I want to pop a question off right off the bat here. Let me pick the right one, since I've got 2 or 3 pages of the stuff written down right here.
Yeah, I don't have any idea why the rest of us are on the show, because it'll just be a Jeff Stig show. So
it'll happen. It'll come. Oh, I got to open up this comments.
Comic relief.
All right, Stig, here we go. First question before we get going here.
Okay.
What made you decide to do this?
Well, that's kind of a long story, and I have told it in my developer's note, so I don't want to completely tip that off, but I will say that one day I just got an idea for what I thought would be a good small game for the system, and so I worked up an idea and I developed it just a little bit, and then I reached out to Dick Whitaker, who is I guess for want of a better term, he's the owner of the GBACW system, having bought it from Richard Berg a few years prior, and he put me in touch with Tony Curtis over at GMT, and I guess I would just say that things didn't turn out the way I planned, but then they ended up turning into By Swords and Bayonets. So,
well, I mean, it's happening. So something was successful about it. And just curiosity, when did you start on this? When did you actually start putting pen to paper for this project?
Right. It started on a lazy Sunday afternoon, I believe, in 2019.
Oh, the year of Death Valley, right?
Yeah.
And you started working up, and you knocked all this. My God, man, you've knocked all of this. Well, so you submitted to GMT within what, the last year?
Yeah, last Thanksgiving.
So you put a good 3 or 4 years in.
Yeah.
This is gonna have some good. Okay, so we're gonna give this up here to Stiglr to let him get some stuff on screen, but we're generally talking. GBACW is not necessarily a game that you intro somebody into playing Hex Encounter War Games because it's got depth. But what you're doing is you're not getting rid of the depth, but you're minimizing what you have to move around on a board.
You have encapsulated it perfectly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and pull up what you got, and we're going to watch the chat. We may cut you off to answer some questions and stuff, but let's see what you want to demonstrate here, and then we're going to grill the daylights out of you.
Okay.
Hey, while Stig's pulling that up, Jeff, can you so I'm sharing this on my channel, and obviously I'm World War II stuff, which is primarily people who watch my stuff. So what is JBCAW? Can you just do a quick highlight while Stig's pulling stuff up?
So GBACW started years ago. It's Richard Berg's tree. Of course, I'm always going to say that my favorite game was always Terrible Swift Sword. Andrew has sent me, I think, 2 copies of that. I had 2 copies around here, and that's one that I'm never ever going to let go. The rules a lot simpler back then, but we're talking tactical level American Civil War and of some of the greatest battles that were part of the American Civil War, and then some a little smaller quarter. Of course, you can't have a Civil War system without Gettysburg. You can't have a Civil War system without Antietam and things like that. So,
what's
this
the
system,
time frame per turn, Jeff? What's the time frame?
Well, the new
and hex scale?
GBACW is an hour, but formations could have 4 activations. And the original GBACW was, I think it was 15, and no, it was 20 minutes, and it was like it was pretty much I go you go, with firing amidst all that stuff and melee amidst all that stuff. And then, of course, the rules got really, really deep, and they went to the chip pull, the activation system. I missed most. I had a couple of those games laying here in my closet when I quit board gaming, just hung on to them, and then eventually started playing them. But they really, the depth really, really, really went up the chart with the newer versions of the great battles of the American Civil War. So these games are fun. They're, with all the boxes they have out there, you have some that you can sit down and when I say you can play them in a short time, I don't necessarily mean you're going to play one in an hour. But for example, the game sitting here over my shoulder is the Shiloh Into the Woods. How long have I had this up now? 3 weeks?
Long time.
Yeah. And I'm 7 hours of gameplay, game turns into it.
What's the ground scale? I think it changes by game, some of the games. But
was a Stig 125 meters, 100 meters, kind of varies a little bit.
Yeah, it varies. There are a couple of games that are as low as 75 yards per hex. Like one of them's in the Gringo Mexican-American War set. So a couple of them are real small. Most of them are between 110 and 140 yards per hex. And 125, I guess you would call the average. Right.
And now this game here, like there are other systems out there in different eras where command is massive in this game. It means the world in this game to what you're going to be able to do. So I'm going to say that when you're playing this thing, your priority focus, I think, has to go to that, has to go to command and where those leaders are. One of the interesting rules you'll find in the system is that your big commanders, core and up, they don't move till after the turn is completely done. So and believe me, I catch myself all the time. Damn it, I forgot to move Bragg, or I forgot to move Johnston or Beauregard when I'm playing this one here. And it's actually a benefit to do that because now you can put those guys. You don't just pick them up and move them, although you almost can to an extent, but you move them at the end to where they're going to be effective for that next turn when it starts.
If you get it correct, right?
Yeah,
if you move your other commanders and keep them in command range, right?
Yeah, and this system too also creates, and I'm finding especially with this thing here, havoc with the masses of units. I think you're getting. I wasn't there, like I said, I missed the Civil War by a couple years, but the havoc and the panic of units moving through each other, running through each other, trying to advance through another unit, and get into grips with the enemy. And I'm finding that playing this thing here, I got a damn unit that I can't move out of the way so I can get somebody else through it because of the mode that they're in and not being able to move as far. So,
and actually, a retreat is even more difficult. Like if you have an established battle and you've got a division, say, or even a brigade on the front line, and you can see it's starting to get chewed up, and you've got another similar unit somewhere behind that can go and take over for it. It's like, okay, that's all fine. But then you try to actually get that chewed up brigade disengaged from the enemy without, routing or collapsing or going combat ineffective. And then after you get it out of the way, move the other brigade in, meanwhile, what's the enemy doing? They're not just sitting around letting it happen. So it's very, very difficult to orchestrate all these forces without creating additional havoc. And the system really excels at showing the chaos of command. So, as the player, you're supposed to be the person that's in command and really, all of the commanders really. But there are a lot of ways that the system takes the control out of your hands and ruins your God view, the map where everything. You can see everything on the map, even that the commanders couldn't see. You have a background, something about the battle and what really happened. So you have that advantage too. But the game system has ways of
screwing that up.
Yes, taking that control out of your hands, and it's at once really, really aggravating, and also it adds to the fun.
Right.
Because if you've ever been in a situation where, say, you want to launch an attack and you've got the perfect setup, everything is there, all your ducks are in a row. The only problem is your units aren't on attack footing.
Right. All right. Well,
And
before we turn Stig loose here, Todd, let's identify some of these people that are.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a good start. And I did come up with a couple questions, but I'm going to want, like you said, let's get Stig. So, yeah, we have some great comments coming in, and we'll kind of approach questions as we go. Someone did just Mark says he's set up Death Valley's Battle of Fisher's Hill, so that's cool.
Mark Golfier, nice.
Yep. And so, anyways, we got guys making some comments here, but we'll get to some of the questions after Stig kind of gets going here. So I say, Stig, share your screen. Let's go.
Yeah. And so while you're doing that, Stig, let's answer. Can we answer Rob's question? Because that one, I didn't even think about that.
Who's Rob?
Oh, yeah, that's good. That's good.
Oh.
Let's see, entire screen. I'll share this one.
We know it's P500, but do we have any potential release?
Oh, yeah. Stig, you have any idea when it might come out, or have you heard anything?
Actually, no.
Okay.
I really don't know. And the reason I don't know is because, since COVID kind of banjacks the entire shipping, printing, production process, so that nobody really knows how long it's going to take for something to actually appear. I know I submitted the project just after Thanksgiving, and in just actually the last 2 days, they have started to send me emails, and I'm working with Charlie Kibler now, and he's starting to ask questions for more information and stuff like that. So it's starting to spool up.
That's
but
cool.
I have no idea, even once we're done with all of the production and the proofreading and everything like that, then it goes off to a printer. And then once that happens, I have no idea how many projects it's going to be behind. Then once it's printed, I don't know how long it's going to take, to get on a boat and travel from China to, wherever they want to offload it. So it's like, I really wish I could give somebody an estimate, but I really can't.
That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's hit its number by leaps and bounds, the fact that you're hearing from them and starting to talk to you. I mean, it's moving through the chain. It hasn't shown up in the emails yet, and that's why that's one reason I wanted to do this thing, is just to keep it in the forefront of everyone's mind. And you still have a little bit of time to pre-order it, everybody, but get your pre-order in. So anyway,
yeah, I've been watching the emails too, and I was like, isn't this like almost ready for the art department? Come on, when is it gonna, when is it gonna pop up on that list? So I'm waiting as much as everybody else is.
Now,
cool.
So Ig just put a statement there in the bottom. Example of playbook that's going to be huge for understanding this. So when you're popping this stuff on the screen for everybody to look at, I would say let's see if we can't identify some of those things like Ig's talking about, things that are going to help bring people that are standing on the edge about this thing because they think it's too deep to get them here to enjoy this. And so have at it, screen, brother.
So one of the things that we came up with, or actually I threw myself under the bus and volunteered to do this, was to come up with a example of play booklet, which GMT uses in several projects, and basically use it to illustrate what's going on. So basically we took one of our games, and using the Vassal module, I just basically went through and I played 3 turns of it, and I captured screenshots to show everything that's happening. And then I just wrote it, in print. So, you can see it actually on the map, and you can read about it. And there are, also not only what happened, but maybe why it happened, and maybe what some other alternatives might have been if the player were smarter, right? So it's an attempt to kind of show everybody how the system works turn by turn. And that, by the way, is one of the biggest impediments to new people learning the system, is that the rules aren't necessarily that complex, and a lot of them just reflect common sense and physics, right? And just translate that into rules so that you're doing things that a unit in the 19th century would have been doing. But it necessarily has to break things up into different segments, like the segment on command, a segment on fire combat, a segment on shock, a segment on morale and effectiveness, and all of those things have to be kind of placed in the rules in separate sections and talked about. But in the course of a game turn, they all kind of flow together. So it's really difficult to just explain simply how the system works. And I've had an occasion to try and teach people how to play the game, and every time going into it, I'd set a date with somebody to explain them the system, and I would tell them, and I would think to myself, oh yeah, I've played this enough, I'm familiar with it, I can explain this in 45 minutes tops. And then I start explaining, and I start talking about one facet, and then when I'm in the middle of it, there's like, but then there's this example that is different in this case or that case. So I keep getting diverted, right? And then like 3 hours later, I think I've done a half a decent job of explaining it, but it always takes so much longer to explain than you think it would. But once you get it kind of under your fingers, it flows really well. It makes sense, and it's really not that difficult. And if you have the rule book close by, which you should always have the rule book close by, because you're going to run into some edge cases that you're going to have to look up on the fly, you get used to it. So this booklet is kind of a way that we're hoping we can show how the game moves, both for people who like to read, for people who are more visual. And we just go through, and then also there will be a section in the back on other GBACW examples of play that are common in other games, but maybe not in By Swords and Bayonets. Things or things that didn't happen in this earlier example for Big Bethel.
So would these examples of play be so someone could learn stuff about all the newer games and the way the rules play, right? It's not just
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
The
Cool.
example is from By Swords and Bayonets, but the concepts translate to any and all of the games in the system.
So the core rules are of GBACW are that's from top to bottom in all of the systems. Even in yours, there's nothing, you're not diverting from that other than what you're putting in the battle books.
Yes. And in fact, I insisted upon that when we first talked about doing this project, and we decided we were going to market this as, for want of a better term, a starter kit. And of course, the issue came up. Well, do we want to make this like an easy set of rules or some relaxed realism or something like that? And I immediately said no. I said I will have no part of that. And the idea for this was to, as Jeff said, strip down the large number of units that you would have to contend with if you were playing 3 Days of Gettysburg, and you've got 7 Union Corps versus 3 large Confederate Corps, and you can just get overwhelmed just in the number of units. So the idea with this was, let's bring it down. None of the battles have more than 1 division of troops, often less. There are a couple of situations where one side has 1 or 2 brigades only. So by bringing it down and narrowing the focus to just maybe 1 brigade, 2 brigades, you can, keep from getting totally overwhelmed and swept under by just, there's so many pieces and so many decisions. We decided to just bring it down. Also, the map sizes are all 17 by 22, so they're half of a standard sized map, 22 by 34, so they're half the size of that. And each of the battles usually has fewer than 50 counters per side, right? So, and then of course you'll have markers and informational chits and things like that. But the idea is to just keep that down, keep it centered on a small footprint, so that you can kind of understand the concepts. And
but in the same token, Stig, you're not okay. So just because you've pulled this thing down to where there's, we're just going to go ahead and say it, minimal counter density on the map, this game's not going to take away from the confusion that is in a fight of this type. I mean, you're still going to have units that are. I'm going to go back to Iggy mentioned the Civil War Brigade series from MMP, which I love that system. And you want something that'll just drive you up the wall, that'll do it. But I got news for you. This system will do it to you here too, because you get a unit out of command, or you get a command that's out of command of its parent, and they're not going to respond. Or you try to change something for a leader in this game, you're rolling on a chart. And even better is they've given abilities to the leader, or they've given a characteristic to the leader that may send you completely off course. So this game here can really send you down a bad path or a good path at times.
Yes, indeed. I've often said that one of the things I really love about this system is that you get a personal sense of something you might read in a good Civil War history, where one of the commanders sends orders to another commander to attack, and so he's sitting on a knoll somewhere back, safely out of the way, and he's looking through his eyeglass at what's going on, and he's looking and nothing's happening, and it's like time's going by and the opportunity's going by, and you can just imagine a Robert E. Lee or a George McClellan or somebody like that, sitting there going like, go, attack, do it now. And nothing happens because the commander either didn't get the orders or is confused by the orders or just decides that's not what he wants to do. And so the opportunity goes begging, and those things can happen to you in a GBACW game more often than not, actually.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be so much fun to get something lightweight in there. What else?
Just for background, since we're talking about sometimes you've got anything as big as Gettysburg to down here where you're looking at maybe a single division or a brigade or a couple brigades on the table. Do counters account for individual regiments?
Yes. The counters are regiments of infantry and cavalry and batteries of artillery.
Okay. And is that the same counter scale, for lack of a better term, all the way up to Terrible Swift Sword?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Damn. Okay. Cool.
Yes. All of those are regimental level.
Outstanding. Cool.
All right. Let me throw a question here before you switch screens on us here. Why these battles?
Yeah. Well, the first one, as I said, the idea came from an idea I had for one battle. And as I said, plans got changed. And before I knew it, I was responsible for creating a box full of 4. So kind of the idea was to replicate the old SPI quad idea. That was part of the marketing idea. But after that, after the initial battle that I chose, I had to scramble and go, okay, now I've got 3 more battles. What are they going to be? So I just started, doing a little research and going hither and yon on the internet, trying to find 3 other, battles that maybe hadn't been done much elsewhere, if at all. And then you're at the mercy of your historical resources. And some battles, even large and important battles, sometimes you'll find that the information that you need to build a game to this scale just isn't there. And so you either have to make a lot of wild guesses, or you find another battle that has more complete information. So the 4 battles that I ended up with are, we've got Big Bethel here, and this, by some people's account, is the first quote unquote pitched battle of the Civil War, and it happened in June of 1861. And it basically has a Union force that is moving on Yorktown on the peninsula, which would be the site of a big campaign in 1862. But even before that happened, the Union decided they were going to move on Yorktown, and they landed at the foot of the Virginia Peninsula, and they sent a force, and they just devised this really overly complicated plan to take over this rebel bulwark of basically just dug in positions astride this swollen Wythe Creek here. And so, they were asking way too much of the troops for, this early stage of the battle. The person who was supposed to be in command couldn't even be bothered to make it on the field, except to extract his troops after they had gotten routed by the Confederates. And it's a pretty crazy battle, but again, it has the right size, and it has a lot of the flavor that people like. So that's a really good one. Then we have Mill Springs, and this was a battle fought in January of 1862 in Kentucky. And this went a long way to determining the fate of both Kentucky and Tennessee in the General War. So you had a Confederate force which went into like winter quarters with its back to the Cumberland River against the advice of the Confederate high leadership. But he decided he was going to go and attack a Union force that had gotten split up because of the of a swollen creek, and they were trying to march to consolidate, but the Confederates thought they could kind of catch him and defeat them in detail before they linked up. So they come up this road here and they try to take on the Union force. And this battle was also famous for the horrible, horrible weather. It's January and it's not snow, but it's a terrible pelting rain that came down most of the day through this battle that basically hampered the Confederates' movement enough to, keep them from fulfilling their objective. So this one will have some very interesting rain rules in it that I added just to see, if people like those, because I noticed that there isn't much in the way of weather system wide, because most of the battles were fought in the summertime and in nice weather, so it usually doesn't become an issue. But in Mill Springs, it certainly will. So there's those two. Let's see, what else have I got?
Now, Stig, when you were when you were creating these, one of the things that I and Todd and I actually Andrew, we have this discussion quite a bit about victory conditions in games.
Mhm.
And I'm going to ask you this because I want to know right off the bat. Please tell me that these are not just let's make them ineffective. Are there other victory conditions that apply to these scenarios, or maybe not all of them, but some of them, where there's locational or things like that?
Yes, I went out of my way to make sure that these weren't just for small attritional battles where the idea is just to render as many of the enemy's brigades, divisions, corps ineffective, and you win the game that way. So usually there are victory points for that factor in, but it's not the be all end all. There will be an objective. There'll be a time limit. There'll be something else going on, and that's a good segue to New Bern, which is another one of the battles in the box. And this was fought in coastal North Carolina in 1862 in March. And this one is really interesting because it features a Union force under General Burnside who have been boated down to the North Carolina coast on the Neuse River, and they're working their way up the coastal region there towards an important city. And the Confederates under Branch, they set up this line of both abattis. You can see there's some abattis here, and also this kind of brown tinted line. This was called the Fort Thompson line. So it's anchored by Fort Thompson here out near the coast. and it's basically just dug in with rifle pits and entrenchments all the way along this, and on either side of the railroad that runs through the vicinity. So the problem for the Confederates is they don't have enough men to adequately man this entire line, which is a little bit more than a mile. And the Union's problem is that with all these woods here, it's hard to keep any semblance of command control. And you've got to charge across these abattis. Meanwhile, the Confederates are firing at you, so it's harder to be able to rally anybody because you can't find them on the battlefield. And then you've got the swamp here facing a good portion of the line, and it definitely has its say in what's going on. So this was a really interesting battle, and it also has some very interesting special rules for when the Confederates decide to abandon the Fort Thompson line and what that means to the victory conditions and the calculus of the game. So once the line is abandoned, the calculus changes. So if you banked on winning the game a certain way, but then things went differently, once the Confederates abandon the line, there's a different way for them to win. JBX 30,001. That's Abati. Abatis. It's a French term, and it is basically cut down trees with sharpened edges that are set out in a field facing the enemy, and they serve to channel the enemy and keep them from reaching a point like these improved positions here. So it slows them down, makes them stumble over trees and try not to get cut up. Meanwhile, you can shoot at them.
Do the brown jagged line that looks like trenches, is that more of a breastwork, or is that just kind of okay? So
yes.
So
there are some dedicated breastworks in here.
Oh, okay.
But the rest are dug in.
Improvised. Okay. So Hexy and I are going down the GBACW route right now. He's learning that with me. And so it's kind of cool to see this zoomed in because it's obviously a zoomed out scale, right, compared to this.
Yeah.
And so you just have a counter that says they built some abattis in there. They built a breastwork. So it's really cool to see kind of what that is. And because I hadn't really spent any time digging into what that meant yet. I'm just trying to learn the rules right now. But anyway, so this is really cool to see.
Think about it like functioning as an area denial thing, kind of like an early sort of barbed wire. The idea was to prevent ease of movement through things.
Sure.
100% correct. 100% correct.
Today's military, of course, we, one of the training things is we'll take minefields, for example, using things like that to funnel your enemy to where you want them.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's interesting because again, you don't see that in the game. GBACW is just more of a here's just something there to slow it.
It's a defensive bonus.
Defensive bonus. Whereas I like it on the tactical level. You can kind of like, okay, here's why you really want to use it to channel those guys up that opening there or whatever. That's great. All right, cool. Thanks.
Yep. And then the last one I'll show you here is the second battle of Rappahannock Station. And this was fought in 1863, several months after Gettysburg. And so George Meade is still trying to, I guess, pursue General Lee back into Virginia and pretty much getting outwitted most of the way. And this was one where things didn't quite go the Confederates' way. They were trying to see if they could form a new line on the Rappahannock River here. which was a major obstacle for the Union throughout the war. So they thought that they might build an improved position here, as you can see, and they basically built that there to hold, and they left it with only a pontoon bridge here. This was the only way to get across the river because the main railroad had been destroyed. So we have our destroyed railroad trestle here. And they tried to defend it, and so the Union come in from the north here, and it was part of a greater attack on both the left and the right of the map. There are other corps in operation trying to figure out a way to get across the Rappahannock. So this just focuses on this little area. And the Union pretty much made a meal out of it. Were kind of like playing with their food, and they took all afternoon to develop the battle and get their forces into position. And what actually ended up happening in the real event was that they waited until dusk. So this is November, so like 5 p.m. is dusk, and they assaulted this position, and the Confederates ended up having an entire brigade captured because they couldn't get across the pontoon bridge once the Union made headway into the breastworks and the dug-in position on this hill. So it's a very interesting situation, and this one has a scenario that is really short, and it's basically the historical position where it all really comes down to a night assault on that position. And then there's another that starts earlier in the day and allows the Union player to develop the attack a little bit quicker than happened historically and explore what might have happened then. Thank you, Brian. I can't take that much credit for the map, although I did the initial versions for playtesting. Once I'm done with them, we turn them over to Charlie Kibler, who does the maps for the entire system, and he is just a master. He has this way of taking a map that you think looks pretty good the way it is, and he has some kind of special pixie dust that he puts over it, and when you get it back and you're looking at it, you're like, whoa, wow. It's amazing the work that he does in the detail.
Yeah. What to Stig, he showed up there in Gettysburg for like an hour or two when we were up there.
Yes, yeah, I went to dinner with him, and I was I probably embarrassed myself because I was such a fanboy. I didn't know who he was originally when we were like piling into cars and everything like that. And then, somebody finally, at the restaurant, called him Charlie. And then I just kind of put like 2 and 2 together, and I went, Charlie Kibler? He says, yeah. And I'm like, oh no. So yeah.
Oh wow.
So I
real that's pretty awesome. Real quick comment. I'll tell you, Stig. So McMurray is like a mystery brainiac. I mean, the guy reads a book and he remembers everything about it. And this guy knows Civil War stuff pretty well. And he was like, I don't know these 4 battles. So it's kind of cool that he's, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to misspeak for you, McMurray, but I think it's cool that, I mean, it's I don't know, introducing him to 4 battles he wasn't really that familiar with. So that's
it is.
Cool.
And it's cool to see some of the smaller stuff that you don't really ever see get some love. Especially I know that's cool when you see stuff if it's, local to you, but it's smaller and you get to see that sort of stuff all of a sudden. Oh, cool. This isn't a game. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I know there's a fellow named William Byrd who I run into usually on Art Wolf's show on Mondays. and he's from North Carolina, and he's been telling me he's really eager to get a look at what we've done with New Bern. I did later find that someone had done New Bern in
Oh yeah, I
the
got it.
Huzzahs. I think
Yeah,
the Huzzah system.
yeah.
So I took pains not to have a look at that because I didn't want it to
Don't.
influence me at all. So
Oh, that's
you know,
awesome.
I have no idea, which one is going to be better once the smoke clears. But
Oh, this is now. Granted, the huzzahs they're not ugly, but they are not this.
I was about to
okay.
say that map is going to be hard to beat, as well as obviously you're in a ridiculously established system that people really like. That's going
Yeah.
to be.
The other little fun thing about New Bern was it was the last battle added to the set and was not in the original group.
So
And
that
what
does.
happened? Oh,
No,
go ahead.
for it. No, keep going.
So what happened was I had 4 battles, the other 3, and I also had a battle that was fought in Mississippi, the Battle of Raymond.
Okay.
And one day I got an email from Dick Whitaker, and he was saying that another one of our new designers was going to be working on a large set of games around the Vicksburg campaign in Mississippi,
Right.
and Raymond would fit better in that box than it would in mine. And would I, allow him to basically steal it? I would get the credit for it, but can we use it for his project? And so I'm like, yeah, okay. And then of course, the gears are turning, and I'm thinking, well, shit, I've got to come up with another battle. So I went through a bunch of folders of stuff that I had for other battles that didn't make the cut and started working on them. And then I don't even know how I found out about New Bern, but I did, and found that the information on it was pretty solid. And that was one of the prerequisites for all of these battles, was that they all were well supported by information in the original records and other sources. And if I couldn't find good information, I just chose something else. But this one really fell together really well. I had some really good sources to cull from. And
Stig, put all 4 of
actually,
those.
I think this turned out to be my favorite. I really have enjoyed playtesting this one. It had its growing pains, especially around the Fort Thompson line and the abandonment rules and everything like that. So we put it through the ringer, but it really is fun.
Stig, put all the maps up there, so minimize so we can see all 4 of them or 3 or whatever you got there at one time.
Okay, sure.
I want to ask
Okay, let me try to arrange all these without closing them.
And while you're moving this stuff, here's a question for you. What's the largest? What's the right word? I guess the largest parent formation in these 4 battles. Is it a corps? Is it a division?
Division.
So the most you have in any one of these is a division. Okay.
Yes.
So it seems
and a small division at that.
Okay. So just looking at these maps, you can almost classify these 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, you've got the Rappahannock one, which, by the way, I think I played a golf course down there in that area near the Rappahannock. You've got something that's pretty much wide open for maneuver coming at the Confederates in those works in that top left one. Then you've got something with a slightly slightly hazy terrain where you still do a little bit of maneuver, but there's still breastworks. And I mean, all of this except for that one at Mill Springs says, for some reason, my brain says late war because of the dig-ins and the fortifications. And then you've got one in the bottom right-hand corner, which is just saying wilderness and Shiloh all over to me, with the serious case of the woods.
Yep.
Where the Union's got to come out of. So, and then you've got the one on the top right from Mill Springs looks like a great funnel for a fight in the center of the battlefield. So, I mean, you get this thing. Come on, guys, look. This thing is on pre-order for $38. This system is going to be a lightweight counter mix for you to learn a phenomenal gaming system that a lot of people, like I say, they stay away from because they're afraid of the depth. Yeah, those rules are deep. But like he says, the stuff does flow after a while. And we talk about this all the time. You're never going to master every rule in the rule book. You're going to have to look back at stuff. Todd and Andrew and I, we do this all the time, where we have to go backtrack a rule that we apply every 10 minutes when we're playing a game. We still got to go look at it. But you're going to get a sense of what this was probably like in these fights. With, like I said earlier, the chaos of the thing, the havoc that it's creating. So you're going to get that feel. And then a lot of these rules that you're thinking to yourself, like withdraw or retreat, or units that rout away, or units that their cohesion gets busted up on and become ineffective, you're going to start to get the feel of when that happens and what occurs when that happens as you play these things. And he's providing you right here with, now we're going to take only the GBACW of this generation of the rules. None of those games, like I say, we all know Death Valley has come the closest. And up until this system got on GMT's radar, was the system to use. We would tell a lot of people to use to start learning. And that's only been around since 2019. But now you're going to get a system here that Stig has put all the work into, that you can sit a small footprint with a minimal amount of counters, and you can learn the GBACW system in small pieces. And next thing you know, we're going to have you playing Three Dog. We're going to have you playing River of Death, and all those big monster things you're going to want to get your hands on, won't you? Because I'm telling you, this system is worth every penny. And I get angry at myself when I stop playing it. I don't play it for a couple months. I'm like, man, I need to get one out and play it. And that's what happens. I drag out one of these things that I play. So this, even to me, who loves to play the GBACW system, I want to get my hands on this so I can have a smaller footprint to play and get something quicker with it. So $38. I'm telling you guys, you need to get over to GMT if you've had this game on your radar but you're afraid of it. This will be the way to do it. Oh, there's a Vassal. So okay.
Oh yeah, we since I'm kind of the Vassal guy for the system, and that's how I got started. Really, even before I got the idea to design a game, I got involved with Greg Laubach right around the time when he was developing Death Valley, and I kind of volunteered myself to basically work up all of the playtest and also the production Vassal modules for the entire system. And Vassal is great on its own, but for playtesting, it really, really takes sometimes years off of the development time. If you ask Dick Whitaker, he'll explain to you that Into the Woods, we would probably still be waiting for that today if he hadn't used the Vassal modules to help playtesting and spread the playtesting around, so that you have people that don't have to get together in the same location in order to do a playtest. They can just play like week by week or day by day or catch as catch can, and still get a good playthrough, get a good report. And then also with Vassal, you can pretty much record what you did, so you can go back over it and find when things didn't work and why, and that feeds also into the playtesting. So yes, all of these games started by me building the maps, building the counters, building the vassal modules, and then shipping them out to play testers. So there was a question that came on 2 or 3 ago. I'm not sure what it was, but there was a question I didn't catch.
The maps.
One was about the size of the maps. You kind of mentioned it, but
yeah, they are 17 by 11. Or wait,
22?
No, 22. Yeah, 22 by 17 each.
So they're half the size of a normal map.
Yes.
That's great, man.
And are they two-sided or are they 4 separate maps?
That's a great question. They're going to be double-sided, and the economies of scale, for doing that helps keep the price down.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Somebody did point that out, though. This is 4 separate engagements in one box for the pre-order of $38. Somebody pointed that out, and we were talking about this before the show. That's phenomenal.
That's less than $10 a battle.
Yeah.
For just $10, you can get this grain. Support Stiglr now.
But wait, there's more.
Hey,
it's only $9.50 each.
I do have a question about and I missed it. You probably said them, but are these all in kind of 1 year, or are they kind of up in the whole war?
No, they go from 1861 through 63.
Okay, so that's cool. So we see changes in kind of the way their strengths and their command and all that stuff kind of represent through the change through the time, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So okay.
Come on, bro.
Oh God,
what's really is you look at these things and you're thinking, we all have this image of the massive Civil War game, the great big battle that's fought, and we're thinking, how are you going to get that out of these little things? I got news for you. When you put a formation into attack mode, you're not going very far. But when they turn around and run, they might go quite a distance. So these maps are going to be perfect for you to get something. And like I said, I'm never going to sit here and tell you it's a quick play. I don't believe GBACW has anything called a quick play, and I can't see how you could possibly do it. But these are going to be perfect so that you can get the feel of what it was potentially like back then through that game system, and being able to learn the game system in this little small footprint is going to make it so much easier for everybody. And here's the best part: people that get these things that want to learn GBACW, guess what they're not going to be doing is thinking about, oh man, I know everything about Gettysburg. I know everything about Antietam. When I set one of these up, I'm not going to know shit about these battles, which is going to even free me up even more to think about and concentrate on the rules and learn the system. So
that's a good point. I would estimate that 2 experienced players, and I know that's not who we're aiming at, but 2 experienced players could play any one of these in a long afternoon, 5-6 hours, maybe actually less. But of course, if you have 1 experienced player and 1 newbie, and so it's more or less a teaching session, obviously it's going to take quite a bit longer to play.
But then on the flip side, by the time you hit, number 4, you're going to be rolling pretty well, I'd assume.
Yeah.
Good point, Andrew.
Oh, that's actually
you should have a good grasp of everything except for, and I took pains to make sure that this is pointed out, that you're using the regular rules to read through to get to the battle books and talk about that. But what you won't get is an appreciation for the importance of the corps commander to the overall command picture. And that's because there are no corps commanders anywhere in any of these battles. So, I took pains to make sure to tell people, as you're learning the rules, don't don't sleep on the core command rules, the fact that the core commanders and overall commanders only move at the end of a turn, things like that, and what impact that can have on the entire battle.
So are you
You won't get
incorporated,
that.
is the OC incorporated into this system, or is it going to be one of these where, like some of the games where Jackson is his division leader and he's the OC?
No, it doesn't even get there because, as I said, division commander is the highest commander on the field. And I know that we're working on actually putting portraits of the division commanders on those, because usually only the core commanders and the overall commanders get portraits on their counters. But since the division commander is the top dog here, it may turn out that you'll have portraits for the division commanders.
Right.
But anyway, the division commander is the top dog on the map. He is not penalized for not having his core commander on the map, which happens with the larger GBACW battles. So, but aside from that, everything else is the same. The division commander can move, you know, with his forces once per activation. A couple of the battles use AMs or activations by brigade, so you'll have some of that in there.
Well, okay, so for a lot of people out there that, you know, maybe when you see these overall commanders or these core commanders or these you know, like when you see Lee or when you see Grant on the battlefield and they're white counters, they're not, you know, and then you see the core commanders or your district, or I'm thinking GCACW now, the core commanders that are a solid red for the Confederates or a solid dark blue for the Union. Stiglr's tell you, you know, this game, your combat action in this game, your maneuverability and your command system, they focus around that division leader to his brigade leaders. Your core commanders and your overall commanders can affect things like initiative roll, or hey, can I pass this number off to this division to give them an extra activation? They can rally if they're sitting with units. They can do some rallying, but your primary commander on the battlefield is going to be the division down to that brigade.
That's right. So, you know, in a sense, you have greater flexibility since you're not hampered by not tracing command all the way down to or all the way up to the core level. But you still have to trace it all the way down to any of the brigades in the division, unless, of course, a brigade is all you get. So, you know, there's that too.
Yeah, CT. Yeah, he has he showed at the beginning. He's got examples of play, which I meant to ask you. How deep do you go with the examples of play?
Very deep. We talked about it earlier on. There's going to be a example of play booklet, and it's going to basically take you through 3 complete turns of one of the battles. And so you'll get to see exactly what happens in every phase. You know, it'll start out very, very heavy on detail, where for the first couple of fire combats, you'll go through the entire calculation. This unit is firing at this unit. It's this many strength points, and the range is, you know, adjacent. So range is 1. And if you look on the player's aid chart and you check that they have rifles and you see that you get a +1, et cetera, it'll go to that detail, including telling you, okay, we roll a 3 and we're on this column of the combat effects chart, and the result of a 3 is a D -1, and that means that you have to roll another die, take 1 off of it, and compare it to the cohesion of the target unit. So that roll is a 6. So D-1, 6 becomes a 5. Now we look at the defending unit, and his cohesion is 4. So he's disordered. Yes. Yeah. Plenty of explanations. And also there will be some kind of like setup so that you'll see, when one side activates, there might be some text there to explain, okay, well, Magruder sees that he's in danger of being flanked by this brigade, so this is what he wants to do in general. So to do that, he's got all these units that are under attack orders. He doesn't want to be in attack orders right now. He wants to try and change to advance orders so that those guys can, move to a different part of the battlefield instead. And then that brings up the discussion of the order change and how that happens. And then we lay out, who does the order change, what the modifiers are, what the die roll is, what the result is.
Yeah,
and we go through 3 whole turns.
Watch my video that I post tonight on my last 2 turns of Shiloh about the headache of an orders change and not having. Now, Stig, you realize that once I just have this premonition here that once this thing gets in people's hands and they can see a method of learning to play this in a small footprint, GBACW, it's going to explode, man. Because I know in the background too of a lot of the other games that are being worked on. Now, look, we've been going at this for just a little bit over an hour. I got some Stiglr questions I want to ask, not necessarily GBACW. But before I ask those questions, McMurray or Todd, y'all got anything specific to this thing you want to pop?
Go for it, Toddy.
You're muted.
Yup.
You're muted,
Todd, you're muted.
And then that's what I need to know.
There you go.
No, okay, sorry about that. In the examples of play, do you have rules references in there, like this
Yes.
guy gets okay, that's
by
awesome.
case, by case,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, because I'm proofing a kind of a big example of play thing for another totally different system, different company, and I've had 129 rules references, which is awesome if you're trying to learn the game. So that's cool.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
How many turns are like the games? Just generally, I mean, you don't have to tell them all, list them all out.
No. Most of them are between 6 and 8 turns.
Okay.
And combined with the fact that you only have, at most 1 division per side, you may only have like a total of 7 activation chits in the cup in a turn. Okay. So, once you start to get it, turns can go pretty quick.
Yep.
That's cool.
Great. You don't know how happy I get when I draw activation chits for like this thing over here that I'm playing, and I only get like a 2 or a 1 for a division. And then there's no plus from their overall or whatever, or their division benefit. And because you can get these guys are right. I mean, Nordic, he's talking about in there too. You can, some of these big games, boy, you can, like, I'll go over here and I'll play, and I won't even get through 1 turn. It might take me a day or 2 sometimes, but then other days I'm just grinding it and I knock out a whole turn. Like I said, I've knocked out 2 in the last one. So, but yeah.
I remembered recording a playthrough where I was attempting to kind of explain the dynamics and the whys and the wherefores. And I recorded it playing 3 Dog. And of course, that starts with just Buford versus Heath. And then, once the Union starts showing up with the 1st Corps and then the 11th Corps, and then Early starts coming over from Carlisle and everything like that, you quickly go from having a total of like 7 or 8 activation chits in the cup for a turn to having like 40 or 50.
Oh, wow.
Right.
And it happens quick, for Gettysburg.
Wait, I look like your dad? That's hilarious.
All right. Stig. Now I'm gonna hit
here's
you
my
with
last
the
general
question.
question.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just last general kind of GBACW question, and then I do have one Stiglr question, but I'll let you ask. I mean, go ahead and ask yours first. But this is to you, and so Jeff and Stig. I'm curious, where, in your opinion, does the complexity coming? Like, why is this complex compared to some other games? Just GBACW in general.
It's just the depth of the rules. They come in around 40 odd pages, so there's a lot to go through.
Okay.
And there's a lot of concepts that they're just not separate. It all works in together. So there's always a lot of little edge cases that you have to, look up all the time, and you can never really commit them to memory. If I'm playing a game on Vassal or something like that, and I get a log file from my opponent, before I even open it up, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my rules, because I know I won't get 2 minutes into it before it's like, wait, does this unit do that in this case, or does it do that? And I'm going to have to go and look it up. There's no way around it. Eventually some of the concepts will, stick in your brain, but others, it's like every time you come across it, you're going to have to go and, make sure you're doing it right. And it just makes for that, 7+ complexity that it's rated at.
Okay.
So,
gotcha. How about you, Jeff?
Give me your question again.
Well, why is this game? Why do some people consider this a complex game, or why do you consider it a complex game compared to?
Well, okay, so I would have to think that the average gamer, the first thing is when they pick up the rule book, and they're like, "Oh,
40 pages." Yeah,
there's a lot there. And actually, Nordic, he points out to all the reactions a unit can do really make the complexity go up. So there's so many things that that can happen to you. Like Stiglr mentioned a minute ago, hey, you rolled this number and it's not where that cohesion is supposed to be. Now this unit's disordered. Well, that unit's disordered, and then it happens again. And then there's a chart you go to. But let me tell you something. He said it earlier. The game does flow once you get the feel of those things. I think the tricky things in this game that you got to watch out for is one, like I say, I still think it's the primary thing for this game is command. The things that can go wrong because of not being in command, all the way down to a regiment. Retreating, withdrawing. It's just not, I'm just going to turn around, I'm walking out. It doesn't work like that because you got guys in front of you that might unload buckshot into you or buck and ball into you before you turn around and get out of there. Or you might try to back out and thinking, keeping your front to them, and there's things that are going to happen. Then there's things that you would expect to happen that might not, because that unit across from you doesn't have the ability to do it. You know how many times I've had cannons sitting on the edge of a field, and I'm thinking, oh, buddy, I'm going to canister this regiment coming at me. Boom, I fire a shot. Now I'm ammo depleted. All right, on approach fire. Then the guy closes on me, and I fire again, and I roll a 5. Now I'm out of ammo in this game over here. Instead of approach fire, I should have withdrawn. Oh, I can't withdraw because there's no road going through those woods behind me for me to withdraw through in those cannons. So there's all kinds of, and those are the details that if you were reading a book about a fight, like The Wilderness would be a great example, or maybe you were watching a movie like Gettysburg, that guys standing in line shooting musket at each other, that's just wonderful. But what happens when those guys break? That's what I want to know. That's what I want to see. Where's that effect in a movie? Well, you know what? This game takes care of that for you. And that's where the depth of the game comes from.
But it makes it complex to go through.
Yeah.
Yes. But the detail, that's really what keeps us coming back.
It's ASL too. That's why people play ASL, because the details and the stories. Okay.
So in other words, instead of saying, well, my unit pushed your unit back 1 hex, and that's all that happened, by playing these games, you get to identify the regiment, and you can talk about the weapon they used and whether it was the best weapon for the job. And you can tell the story of how they, marched around the flank of another unit and hit them, from the left side, and and drove them, however far. You just get all this detail, and that's what's
Right.
interesting, because you can
Perfect.
see that in your head, and see how it is the same or maybe differs from something that you read in a history, where sometimes I'll read a really good history on a battle, but they won't have enough maps drawn in it, and they're
Yeah.
constantly talking about who moved left and who moved right and who was behind who and what terrain was around, and after a while it all just starts to be this blur, and you're like, wait, I can't really imagine what happened. But when you play it on the map and you've got the terrain right in front of you and the units right in front of you, and you can kind of see, oh, that's why they couldn't hold that position. Look at that open flank there.
That's cool.
So it's the
Okay.
detail.
Cool.
And I know there's a
Right,
lot
Jeff,
of, and I'm not gonna knock the system, because I'm still gonna give it another shot, but I'll just put a point blank. Y'all want to? Somebody wants to bang me for this? Fine, bang me. But it's just, and it is my opinion. All right. Line of battle can't touch Great Battles of American Civil War. Not even close. All right. Line of battle was skinny down, I think. I don't think it applies the authentic effect you get from playing Great Battles of American Civil War. I just don't think it. And while I don't hate any of the maps from MMP, they're not GBACW maps, that's for sure. So their statement made. Now, what I want to do is, we only got a few minutes left. I want to ask you. Then I want to get to a little note about Stiglr here. Okay. So any question I ask, especially this first one, if you don't want to answer it, just say, nope, sorry, not answering that. Don't want you to know. So let's get this first one out of the way, and then this will be just about perfect time. We got about 15 minutes. Steve, what kind of work do you do?
I am an instructional designer. So that basically means that I work on creating corporate training in the form usually of e-learning, but also anything else from classroom aids to PowerPoints to anything that helps my company train. And I work for Providence, which is a healthcare organization on this left side of the country mostly. And I work in support of the nurses. So they have a nursing academy, where obviously they have to go through a lot of training to be able to do that job. So I help support them in training the nurses.
You have an answer for Iggy's question there?
Oh, let's see. My favorite tactical air combat game. Oh boy. That's really, really a difficult question, because I have kind of arrived at the idea that the answer to, what is a really good air tactical game is none of the above.
Yeah,
Because
I
of the
figured.
fact that there's a, that say you're playing a game where you'll play for a half an hour to simulate 10 seconds of actual combat. There's a disconnect there that is really too great to overcome. And also, some of the lessons that I learned, not from playing a paper aerial game, but that I learned from flying a well done computerized flight sim. None of those lessons can really be taught on paper. So situational awareness, stick and rudder skills, you actually have to make the aircraft do what you want it to do. Communications, all those things don't really come across well on an air combat game. So with that being said, I would think that my favorite game, even though it is a little bit too simple and has, some system things that need house rules for, I like Air Force Dauntless. It's a World War II air combat system. it has plotted movement, for those of us who remember having to, to plan in advance and write down the moves for all your aircraft. And it's really simple and really basic, and it has its issues, but it's just a blast to play. It's a lot of fun, and that makes it a little bit more enjoyable than, say, a really, really in-depth and more accurate system like Fighting Wings.
Which is all right, Stig. Here we go. Favorite engagement of the Civil War that you like to game?
That I like to game. I would have to say, Gettysburg is hard to beat, but I would say if I had to tell you what my favorite game was, it would be Red Badge of Courage, and it would be a toss-up between First Manassas or Second Manassas.
Yeah. Good game.
They're both really, really good for different reasons, but both of them are indispensable as far as I'm concerned.
All right.
Okay. Follow up.
Go ahead.
Follow up to that. Why? Well, I don't know. I'm going to assume, is Civil War your favorite? And if it is, why?
That's
of
what
all games.
Good.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
that was fine.
Yeah, I would have to say that ACW is my favorite segment of wargaming, but that's just because I got involved with the GBACW system, and it effectively monopolizes a lot of my time for gaming. I have to go out of my way.
Okay. Hold on. So you just to follow with Todd here. If not GBACW, then what?
Okay. Well, I've played a whole lot of flat top over the years.
Andrew, there you go, buddy.
So I like that. Another one of my favorites is the old SPI Central Front series.
Love it.
Of Cold War Gone Hot. I really, really, really like that.
I think that's the best one in the business. I really do.
It really is. It's a great system. And as of right now, I've got the Winner's Victory box, sitting on my bed, and basically I'm, picking out the rules and everything to read before I go to sleep, and trying to learn that. And I've been kind of kicking the tires around Napoleonics for a long time, and I'm hoping that this is going to resurrect the original Wellington's Victory system.
Yep.
And it's just a gorgeous package. Really looks good. I'm really
I think I may have found
it.
my replacement for Wellington's Victory.
Yeah.
Not in that one, because I didn't order those, but the Glory and Empire, or the system from Lock and Load that's coming, the one that I just played.
Glory and Empire.
Yeah, I loved it. All right, other than gaming, do you participate in any other ACW events?
Events? No.
Anything ACW that's not gaming?
No. Being in Portland, Oregon, I don't live close enough to any of the battlefields to decide to be a battlefield reenactor,
right,
or anything like that. So no, I don't do that. And in fact, when I do battlefield tours and battlefield tramps, if I want to go near the anniversary, I probably won't go on the anniversary of the battle, because I know that there's going to be there's going to be tons of people there. My favorite battlefield tours have been ones where I went for like a week through several fields in Virginia. And I remember one was it was something station. I can't remember the name of it now.
Bristow?
That's embarrassing.
Bristow
no, not Bristow. Close to there.
Brandy,
yes.
Yeah.
Brandy Station. I went to Brandy Station. I got there, and as I was there was an older couple that were, leaving. They got into their car and they drove off. and they were the only people I saw the entire 5 hours I was there. I walked that field, from one side to the other without the car. I mean, I went several miles. It was a nice muggy, hot day. I had my water with me, and I remember there were some um, buzzards or vultures that were like,
They were waiting.
flying along,
For this
and just
guy.
kind of like, just in case, I'm not saying anything's going to happen,
Right.
but if you
So-
get dehydrated, so
Since
that
you're
was
from the-
great.
Since you're from the Northwest, do you hail from the Northwest, or are you somewhere else? From somewhere else?
Nope. Originally, I'm from Philadelphia,
Okay.
and then when I was in middle school, about to start high school, we moved to Los Angeles. And then I went to high school in Los Angeles, and incidentally, that's where I got into wargaming. My school had a wargaming club, and I met all of my best friends, that I'll have for my entire life there. And we were all wargamers and D&D players, and so that's how I really got into it. Went to college in Orange County and started my career in advertising there. And then just like usually through layoffs and the need to get another job, ended up in the San Francisco Bay Area for about
That explains you being a Giants fan.
yes, exactly. So, and then also due to a layoff, that's when my wife and I moved up here to Portland, Oregon, and so we're 21 years here. So
Wow.
and we don't think we're going to make Seattle. So
you're kind of making your way north there.
right, exactly.
All right, let's wrap this up with this right here.
Oh man, I got 3 questions. Oh man.
Oh, no, go ahead. You go ahead. If you got something, fire away.
I can stay longer too if you want.
Well, what game do you remember playing in high school in that club?
Oh,
Like,
good one. Good one.
Oh, okay. I remembered when I first started at my high school, which was a Loyola high school. It's a Jesuit college prep, and I was just meeting all of my soon to be fast friends. And at that time I had been basically playing solo. And I was an Avalon Hill company man.
Sure.
I cut my teeth on Avalon Hill games. I was playing them. And so I go into our gaming club, and all these guys are playing SPI games on paper maps, which I thought were just like, what's with this paper maps? You gotta have a mounted board and everything like that. So I was a snob, and I remember they got me to sit down and play Brightonfeld, and that was that was the fifth wheel of the 30 Years War quad.
Right.
And that game was such a blast that I looked at that and I went like,
Right.
maybe
Andrew,
there is something to these cheap looking little games.
I've been
And
keeping
after that, I just became a total SPI convert.
Okay,
And
you saved me there. You say because I was
Yeah.
keeping a tally sheet on who you were closer to be more compatible gaming with, McMurray or me, and the Avalon Hill and the SPI numbers were going back and forth. So.
Certainly going to be Jeffy.
Yep.
All right, Todd, what's the other one you had?
Yeah, so 2 more. Have you enjoyed the process of designing the game, and what would be your suggestion to someone thinking, I want to design a certain battle for this game, a series, or any series?
Yeah, I can say overall it was enjoyable, but there were also moments where I was just like, geez, what have I gotten myself into?
Right.
Working with my developer, Bill Bern, who's just fantastic.
What a
he knows
stud.
the rules.
What a rule stud he is.
Yeah, he knows the rules in and out, and he's very fastidious. And I mean, he would just take me to task on something, and there would be times where we would just be tugging socks back and forth, and I'm just like, am I the designer or are you? But I respect the hell out of him, and I took as many suggestions from him as I shrugged off, and at times that could be really taxing, but overall I would say the process has been positive. um and I think that I may do something else after this finally gets released, even though it's
Okay.
hard to, because I do so much support for all of the other projects that are going through our internal pipeline.
Right.
From doing the Vassal modules, I'm trying to help develop our young group of new designers and developers by teaching them some of the skills of drawing maps, building counters.
These people don't know, Stig. They don't realize it. I mean, I've heard between Dick and Bill and Tom, Dick Bowlers and Al Smith. And I can't give titles. You probably can't or won't. There's a lot more out there for GBACW that's coming on the train tracks here.
Yeah, it's huge, and it's like, I figure I'm pretty well connected and kind of know what's going on, and then something will come up like on our Facebook page for the system, and it's like, what? Like I heard just this week, I learned that a couple of the guys are working on a reprint of Gringo. So they're gonna, have at that one and do a reprint. And I remember being really surprised when Dick Whitaker announced the Three Dog Deluxe. I'm like, what? So stuff comes out of the woodwork all the time. So the next decade is going to be huge for the system.
All right, Todd.
My last question. I'll shut up. I'm curious. You said Winner's Victory, which is a pretty complex game. It's NES, so it's going to be complex. Yeah. So this, I hope, helps either me or someone else that's thinking about playing GBACW. But how are you going to approach learning that game? Because it's a complex game.
Yeah. Well, I have a little bit of an advantage in that I own and am somewhat familiar with Wellington's Victory.
Okay.
So actually, in my first read through of the rules, I'm looking for the delta, what's been changed or enhanced from Wellington's Victory to create Winner's Victory. And so far, I'm very, very happy at the changes that they've made to it. So Mark Hinkle has done a great, great job on this, I think. So, won't know until we finally get it to the table. And I'm hoping they can come out with a Vassal module really quick on it too.
They need a Stiglr on their team.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
No. I wouldn't sign up for that one.
No, I didn't say you. They need a Stiglr.
Yes, right.
Let's wrap this thing up with this right here. So, and Perry put it, and I'm gonna build on what Perry just said about if you're going to start a new game, what would it be? So here's the question to put to that. We'll put this in two pieces. You can answer it how you want. All right. Your P500 off the table. We're done. We're done talking about that. It's a given. It's going to happen. We're going to get our hands on it.
Mm-hmm.
Future project. And do you have any goals for this year we're in right now? When it comes to
if I decide that I'm going to do a next project, it will probably be the Peninsula campaign of 1862.
Yeah.
Including the 7 days. So I've started, working on filling in spreadsheets and orders of battle, and actually over the last couple of years, I've been almost nonstop reading books on.
Well, I know some people have struggled with the 7 days trying to get OOBs for this stuff.
That'd be huge.
Yeah. It's not. It's the incompleteness of the numbers and the fact that if you read about the peninsula, that on one hand, George McClellan was always overestimating the size of the Confederate army, and
Yeah.
may have fudged his numbers that he reported to Lincoln in order to get more reinforcements. So you can't even trust the official Union numbers on stuff. You have to get it from a lot of different sources, kind of throw it into a blender and decide, okay, how many effectives did they have? Then, since they're all along the Chickahominy and it's just malaria central, diarrhea central there, they had large numbers of troops that were just sick. So, even the stated troop numbers for a given unit might be 10%, 20% less.
Right.
So, it's hard to get numbers. And then also I'm finding the command rules are really going to be insane for that, because
Yeah.
there are any number of cases of total command breakdowns.
You're going to get
Got
another side of Stonewall Jackson if you build 7 days.
Yeah, Stonewall Jackson's torpor. I think people will be surprised when they see Jackson's counter in that campaign, because everybody's used to seeing him having all these stellar ratings and everything like that when he's in the valley. But once he gets to the valley and he's just like totally brain dead for the entire time, it's like he's going to end up looking like like Braxton Bragg. you know so there's that. And then Longstreet completely blew up the Confederate battle plan at Seven Pines, and he was supposed to be going down one road, and he just took his orders and decided, no, I'm going to do this, and didn't tell
Oh, yeah. And
Johnston.
the traffic mess.
Yeah, it's like crazy. So trying to build that into those battles is going to be really, really interesting. So that would be my next project.
So, couple quick ones just relating to
Mhm.
that. Within the peninsula, would you be able to cram all of those engagements and all of those possibilities into one game?
No,
Okay.
It would be broken up into the major 7 days battles, and also Williamsburg, where Hancock got his sobriquet, Hancock the Superb. And
God, there's got to be a dozen fights right there.
well,
Not
there are some
7
that I'm
days.
already thinking not to put in there, either because they were too small, or like the battle along the Warwick line
Yeah.
before Johnson skedaddled away from Yorktown. Those sort of things, it's like they may or may not make good battles, but it's not just the 7 days. It will at least have Williamsburg.
Yeah. Well, the peninsula, 62 and 64? Come on. The only thing that's touching that now is not released yet in the Wilderness. I mean, my God, Culpeper, Spotsylvania, and then all the stuff around Petersburg.
Overland Campaign.
Yeah, I mean,
that's completely different. And also, I hear that Dick Whitaker wants to take a crack at the Peninsula Campaign using the Glory system, which is like maybe a half step up from GBACW.
right.
More like, say, Blind Swords or something like that, where you have demi brigades.
Right.
But
I mean, it
500.
just seems to me there's a vast amount of stuff that could be done in the peninsula and in the overland. And right now, the only thing that we're seeing that's going to touch it is going to be the Wilderness when it eventually gets released. There's just so many fights. But like I say, your little chat here about putting numbers together is probably the most confident that I've heard from anybody that does any kind of game design when it comes to that region or that time period of the fighting.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna lie to you. I wish you 1% success for putting that together and hope that. Let me tell you something. The Civil War gaming world will go nuts over GBACW covering that.
I've got some decent sources that I can use. It's just a matter of corroborating them to my satisfaction before I'm ready to, actually start building counters, because the devil's in the details, and people will pick you apart if you're wrong, if you get a weapon type wrong or something like that. So some of them are, I'm going to have to just take a deep breath and say, okay, I'm going to go with this number, because depending on which source you go from, you could have a regiment that was anywhere from 400 men to 700 men.
Right.
And that's a huge difference in terms of GBACW, right? That's 6 strength points.
Yeah. Well, and that's
Right.
the transition from TSS to 3-Dog that was mind blowing for me when I finally pulled 3-Dog off the shelf and played it the first time. I was like, wow, this is impressive. Because I mean, a regiment in Terrible Swift Sword, a 200-man regiment, one fire and they're gone. The whole regiment's gone.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
Um,
Cool.
good Stig. I'm tell you what, man, this was good.
Wait. We got a question.
He had one more.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Andrew.
no,
Fire
you're good. I've got like 8 more. But
Go
don't
for
worry
it.
about
No,
We're
I'm good. I'm questioned down.
I'm good.
Keep going.
I got nothing else to do on a Friday night, so I'll stay
right.
here as long as you want.
Hit
So
him,
you,
Andrew.
No, you're good. So again, going back to the peninsula, not being as familiar with the grand scope of GBACW versus GCACW, because we mentioned that part of the issues that McClellan ran into, right, was that he's constantly thinking, oh my God, Robert E. Lee has 800,000 men on the peninsula and he's going to push me the hell off right away, right?
Right.
Is that a design challenge that in GBACW you have to address, or are you or does GBACW constrict game design to, okay, your troops are largely at the field and here we go from there?
Yeah. Great question, by the way. I would say that you have to be aware of some of the more strategic things that are going on in a battle. But even if they don't actually affect what's going on that particular map on that particular day, you would probably build those into the victory conditions.
Okay. Yeah. And
right?
that
So you force somebody to maybe do something that, given just a map and some units, they wouldn't do.
yeah.
Right.
And that
So
led
if you
into the
have
next one.
McClellan changing his base as one great example, and you've got units that are sitting somewhere, the forces might tell the players that, hey, I have a shot of like counterattacking here. Why don't I do that? Well, the problem is that in a historical context, the withdrawal is supposed to start tonight. So you're not going forward. You're just trying to orderly retreat. So you have to build in some victory conditions that basically either say you can't go further west than this hex row, or you put in a massive penalty if you move units forward and attack and get them cut up. That'll basically lose the game for you.
Yeah, that was my next question, was if that's not built in, then how does that come into like if that isn't built into your decision making in terms of moving your units, how does that get brought into that game? Assuming that you're not all of a sudden going to be rewriting where engagements took place and who was there. Right. Awesome. Another one, excuse me, that I had from earlier was, again, being a long time GBACW player yourself, not me. And having heard other longtime GBACW players like Jeff and others discuss how the rules have evolved over the years, right? Is GBACW an entirely living to-date system where when a game comes out, it uses the most updated version of the rules? Or is there a possibility that you see a GBACW game drop that uses rules that you would have found in TSS or one of the originals?
Okay. Well, you couldn't go back as far as TSS
Okay.
because the GMT iteration of GBACW is a completely different system, really,
Okay.
than the earlier TSS system.
Okay.
Same designer was Richard Berg, but when it was I think it was either 1999 or 2000 when Three Dog 3 Days at Gettysburg was released. That was the first
Okay.
system that used the chit draw mechanism, and right
Okay.
there,
Yeah.
that divorced itself from any of the earlier TSS based games, which were you go, I go. So right
Okay.
there, it's like you have two. Now, within the GMT iteration of GBACW, and I just addressed a question like that on our Facebook page today, where somebody was asking, I've got a copy of Twin Peaks and it's got, the 2019, I guess, rules in it. Should I use, the latest living rules, or can I use the ones that came in the box? And, the answer is really, when it comes down to it, it's like you bought the game, so you can play it really any way you want.
Okay.
Including ignoring the rules and building your own, right? So,
Yeah.
right away you can say that. But when Twin Peaks came out, those rules were the most current at that time.
Yeah.
So the games will play fine with those rules. Outside of that, you should always, if you can, play with the most current rules for
Yes.
any given
Well, even
system,
in the 2020,
unless that's Labatai, and then you got your choice of 5 or 6.
well,
There
even
you
So,
go.
the
go figure.
2023 rules, they didn't completely butcher the previous ones. I mean, the rules, the additions or adjustments or explanations they're not overwhelming in the 2023.
They did a lot to let's see, it was before 2023. I think 2019 was the last rule set. So I think 2021 actually had some changes where they made some pretty significant changes to
Right.
artillery, and to the line of sight rules. Those were
Right.
the major things that actually really affect, what's going on. So, to answer Richard Kerr's question, yeah, I kind of agree with you. Why would you want to go backwards with the rules? But, if for whatever reason you like, you feel that, hey, I bought this game, it's got a rules book set in it. I don't want to go online and go to the GMT site and look up the living rules and download something and have to print it, blah 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 blah. You may just make a personal decision that you don't want to bother with that, and there's nothing wrong with that, because like I said, an earlier set of rules that comes in the box was current at one time, and yeah, there may be some issues that were subsequently dealt with, but you can still play the games with them and still have a good time.
There you go. Outstanding. Sorry, the the main drive behind that question. I didn't realize that there was such a rapid departure between, I guess,
TSS and GBACW. Yeah.
Which was one of my next ones was, okay, so you have TSS and you have Three Dog. What's the main difference? But that would explain what the main difference is.
Yes.
And then the other question that was leading from that was the usual kind of divergence for intro or starter games is either you have a game on full scale with slightly simplified rules, or you have a game with full rules on a smaller scale, which is what you've done with Swords and Bayonets. So the question is that you usually don't see those two mixed up within systems. At least I haven't seen many board game series and systems that mix those two. Is that, but then again, GBACW is large in terms of the scope of the system, how long it's been around, and the number of titles and engagements covered. Are those, again, and obviously if that's not something you can address, is that an alternate or another possibility out there for GBACW right now? Obviously it's not the route, like I said, that you took, but is that one of those things that might be in development, might be running down the line at some point in time?
Well, I will say that the decision has already been made and it's under development right now, is that there will be a simplified set of rules for GBACW.
Okay, and when you said that you wanted when you started to stick with full rules, that was kind of the impression that I got. So
Yes.
that's a cool clarification. Okay.
Yes, and it's not the decision I would have made, but I don't own the system, so I can't make that decision.
But what's the reason, Stig? What's the reason they want to do that?
Well, the reason is they want to widen the tent and they want to bring in more people.
Yeah,
I've always been
avenue.
I've always been of the mind that I can accept that GBACW isn't for everyone, and what makes it out of reach for some people is the reason why I enjoy playing it. It's the detail, it's the richness, it's all of those things that if you institute easier rules, you're gonna, kind of gloss over some of the detail, some of that richness in favor of making it easier to play or shorter or something like that. And it's like, no, I don't want it shorter. The games take as long as they take to play, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And if I want something simpler, those games are out there. I can go and I can find a simpler level Civil War system, even as far back as like Blue and Gray, where you got counters with one number on them and that's it. So it's like, yeah, you can already get simpler, easier, less detailed, or even just on a larger scale like GC ACW, which is fantastic at showing the operational level and the strategies that our games really don't really
they
touch
wanted
upon.
to create the brigade. We've only got 3 glory games. If they wanted to go back and do more brigade level stuff or demi brigade level stuff like that, I'm going to go with you. Okay, I understand it, and I think Andrew's he's probably the one that can put the best points on this, because that would, if I would have a dream of pulling him into GBACW. If that's what's going to do it, then okay, great.
Well, and that's my point. Are they discussing changing the overall system rules to then all GBACW games are that simpler rule set, or is it an ASL SK versus ASL sort of thing where it's an option, and what it would do is open up just that second avenue for then players to play the full GBACW rules?
Yeah. Frenchie, yeah. If you can get in contact with Dick Whitaker, give him an earful, because I'll back you up on it. Um, Here's the thing. Simple GBACW will basically be its own flavor. And, one of the reasons why I really detest that is that the fact that Labatai has 4, 5, 6 different systems of rules that you can choose from for the same games. It makes me feel like a big hypocrite, knowing that we're going to have an easy set of rules, which will, I guess, be our Marie Louise rules. So, but as I said, I don't make that decision. The other problem that I have with it, which extends the Labatai, is if you have alternate or multiple rule systems, especially ones that are, say, tailored to be easier, you are, whether you want to admit it or not, you're adding to the confusion of learning the full boat system by bringing players in with a easier to grok set of rules that will have the unfortunate side effect of reinforcing bad habits and concepts that they're later going to have to relearn if they decide, hey, yeah, I want to go for the full boat system. But now they're used to doing things a different way. They've got those rules down in their head. Now you're asking them to go and go, well, in the regular rules, this is how shock combat is done. Now they got to go and relearn it again. Now the whole complexity thing becomes an issue all over again. So now you got a bunch of players who are still confused, and so what's their experience going to be like? Also, you're diluting the player base, because invariably you're going to have a group of players on this side who love regular GBACW like I do, and they don't want to play anything else. Then you're going to create another group over here that would cut their teeth on the easy rules. They really like those, floats their boat, and they're thinking, no, this works for me. I don't want to go to the full boat system. So now you got two sets of players, and if you're ready to die on that hill and dig in your heels, you can't play with another player who likes the other rule set. So you're instead of building your community, you're just creating additional communities that are somewhat similar but really don't coexist well. And that's the biggest problem that I had with Labatai. And they got 3 or 4 or 5, I don't know how many different rule sets, and it's very detailed, and it's Napoleonics. And so I can't wrap my head around the fact that in the same system you have 3 ways to do a cavalry charge. It's like Napoleonics is nothing if not very, very formal and procedural. It's like the ultimate incarnation of rock, paper, scissors, the way that you fight a Napoleonic battle. So to my mind, a designer has to figure out what he or she is trying to say in their system, and there's one way to do a cavalry charge in their system, and that's the way they see it. Other systems can do it differently, but okay, if you like that, you play that system. But if you have Labatai, there are 3 different ways to handle command, and 2 or 3 different ways to do a cavalry charge, and all these little differences, which for a complex system, builds builds the complexity, because you've already got a complex system that has all these little edge cases, and now you multiply that by 3, 4, 5, or 6 because of the different rule sets that you have to choose from. So I've never liked that, and it's really the single reason why I haven't gotten into that system. I own, what is it, three of them now, and yeah, I own 3 of them, and I sometimes show up on Eric Holmgren's um, show on Monday nights after Ard Wolf, and I watch them play through some of these battles, and just trying to kind of learn by osmosis and all those sort of things. But I can't just like pull the trigger and like actually pull out one of those games and actually commit to learning one of the rule sets. One of the reasons is like, well, which one do I want? I'm not exactly sure which one I want to learn.
I'm going to get off that Labatai because that's another headache that's coming down my way here soon. Andrew, you got anything else to the GBACW world?
Hopping off that one. It was just a one of those random quick shot, just shoot from the hip basic starter questions that I was going to ask at the front. But if you had to choose one GBACW game that isn't yours, that was this is my favorite, whether that's, the one that you would keep forever if you had to throw away all the rest of the ones, or the ones you've had, the one you've had the most fun with in the past, or just your favorite, whatever, gradient you want to use for that. What would be your favorite GBACW game that you can think of that isn't by Sword and Bayonets?
Yeah. Well, I'll start that by saying I don't think by Swords and Bayonets will end up being my favorite, even though I designed it.
I like it. Right.
After that, it's a toss up. My personal favorite, based on the great fun and experiences I've had playing it, would have to be Red Badge of Courage. But I would also have to continue to doff my cap to Greg Lobach and Death Valley. It still is the best value in wargaming for the buck ever that I can think of. And the mix of those 8 to 11 battles, depending on how you count them, is so rich, and there's so much replayability in that box for just $89 if you're paying full boat retail. I think it was something like, yes, and then it has an expansion. Yeah, I couldn't believe it when I found out that there was going to be an expansion. After going through that playtest process and building all those modules like 3 or 4 times over before it was actually done. And then, it comes out, it wins a Charlie, everybody's happy and all that. And I'm like, okay. Then it's like, what? An expansion? It's like, what? It wasn't enough? And sure enough, they turned out to be, great expansion battles too. It's like one of those turned out to be probably my favorite in the set, just because it's such a departure from all the others, and it has this swirling cavalry duel on like a bowling alley map. It's really long, and you've got the Union coming down this valley pike, and the Confederates are just trying to basically fend them off and delay them until they get to the real hard point. And I had never had the opportunity to play any game where cavalry had such an active role in determining that battle.
Stig, I tell these guys all the time, I can step out my apartment door here, and for the Valley Pike is like I could throw a rock to it from outside my door, and I can step out my door and there's 20 engagements, small stuff. And then, and then I got Winchester 20 minutes south of me. I got Harper's Ferry
I'm so
10 minutes to
envious.
the east, and Antietam 15 minutes to the east, and we talk about it all the time. Look, guys, I want to lock this up. This has been good tonight, man. And I know damn well that I could sit here, and I know Andrew could too. There's no doubt in my mind. And Todd would have to moderate us and beat us with a stick, but we could talk ACW all night long. And I got a feeling we're going to have to do this again sometime here in the near future, because this was really good. Hey,
I'm all
everybody
for it.
out there, appreciate y'all being in here this evening and all the support. Todd, go ahead before I finish this up.
We got one more. The pre-order went up by one during the show. I was
Got another
monitoring.
person in there.
Yeah, everybody run over there
good.
and pre-order.
So yeah, get
It's
over
been
there,
a
guys.
while
It's,
since we added one.
Oh, Clay's on here. Outstanding.
Yeah, this one's going to be. I'm telling you this. I think the GBACW community is going to massively grow when people get their hands on this one. Rob, appreciate that. Perry, appreciate it. Walt, thanks. Everybody, thanks for being on here tonight. Y'all keep up. I'm posting a new video right now for Shiloh, and you can keep tuned to us. There'll be some more stuff on this GBACW. Stig, thanks, man. Appreciate you being on here, brothers, tonight.
Glad
Fun
to.
to know he's
Good to meet you.
Yep.